So Toby Maguire jumps onto the scene as Spider-Man in, what was it? That had to have been
2002?
2000. Okay, 2002. I'm going to trust you on that. You're my date person. I can't name a single date that any of these movies came out. I might know like a 5-year range. But so Tobey Maguire's first Spider-Man movie was, the reason we're starting here as opposed to anywhere else and starting with just live action is because this was really right at the beginning of superhero films being live action and being remotely acceptable.
Yeah.
But it was a really an experience for me going to the theater as a kid. It was, one of my first time. I think around that time we had like X-Men had come out. Mm-hmm. Was that one already out? Yeah. And there was starting to be like this hope among like comic book fans and superhero fans of like, whoa, maybe we can actually get some adaptations that can really get some steam. And I think that Spider-Man 1 is still one of the better superhero films, at least in terms of standalone solo superhero films of the years. I mean, that film did so much right.
Well, it also, in retrospect, holds up a lot better than X-Men. Like the X-Men movies, to me, are ones that were very successful at the time and very well liked at the time. But looking back on them, they really don't hold up to me.
Even the good ones like X2.
X1 and X2, to me, don't hold up at all anymore.
Yeah, and I enjoyed them, and I still think that X2 is a good movie. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
But Spider-Man 1, actually, there's areas where it doesn't hold up as well, but it holds up pretty well.
Well, the thing is, it's an endearing movie. And they didn't really reach too deep in like the effects and the scope of what they were going for to the point where it would struggle to hold up. I mean, and this is why I really have a soft spot for Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man in general, is because the stories in that series, barring the third one, were incredibly well done, and they were small. They were dedicated specifically to Spider-Man and his character, like as a person. And I think that's something that a lot of current superhero movies have lost.
Yeah. Yeah. The movie moves really well. Like it's a really fun and entertaining movie, and it never drags. And it's thoroughly entertaining. I don't think it balanced the really campy tone that Sam Raimi was going for as well as 2 did. Mm. So parts of it feel overly campy. Green Goblin looks way too much like a Power Ranger. Some of the lines are horrifically bad. Like there's areas of it that I feel like it was this tonal balance that Sam Raimi was going for that he really like nailed in Spider-Man 2. But in Spider-Man 1, it stumbles a little bit.
Yeah, I could see it stumbling a little bit in Spider-Man 1, but even still, and this could be because of the time, it was kind of new territory back then. On one hand, I like to be like, I wish that a lot of the newer superhero movies were more like those movies. But then on the other hand, it's like they were the first to do it, really. Mm-hmm. The first ones to really attack that. And part of what I really loved about that movie, specifically 1, but this involves 2 as well, is that they really captured the Spider-Man archetype in its purest form, because the Spider-Man perception has changed over the years from Andrew Garfield to Tom Holland. And I understand that it probably needs to, but the classic nerdy teenage Spider-Man and his teenage problems, and like I thought, and just the whole Tobey Maguire really captured the kind of nerdy vibe of Spider-Man in a way that I feel like the other two, and I get that it's supposed to change, but like without moving forward too much, like Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland are way too attractive and cool to play Spider-Man to me, and I understand why they did it, and I like aspects of both of those portrayals, but going back to the beginning, Tobey Maguire is always going to be like the original Spider-Man for me.
Yeah. And he was also very much an adaptation of the 50s era Spider-Man.
Which is the most popular.
Right. Whereas actually Garfield and Holland look far more like the modern looking Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm. And I don't fault the fact that they've moved on in that way. It's just in my heart, it's like, oh, that's like what I've always wanted Spider-Man to be. But and now moving into 2, there's plenty you can say about 1, plenty you can say about 2, and I don't even know how much you want to touch on 3. But Spider-Man 2 has got to be obviously the best of the 3, and it might be, in my opinion, the best Spider-Man movie that's ever been made so far in regards to live action. But it took everything that the first did well. Like I really like the first. I think it's a good movie, but it took everything that the first one did well and just elevated that and really nailed home just such a great condensed and like small story. Like it was a story about Spider-Man. It was about a few people and a few instances, and they did it so well. You know, so many superhero movies now have to go big. They have to end the world. They have to have, you know, if it's in Marvel, it's got to have 7,000 more superheroes like poking their head in like, hey, I'm a cameo. But like this was back before you had all that. And it was just such a pure, well-told story.
Yeah. And also the action scenes in 2 are still incredible.
They still hold.
Some of the CG is a little bit like, you know, dodgy, but it's totally acceptable for the
it's
time.
Not to the point of like
it still looks really good.
Yeah. But they're just creative. They look great. They feel great.
I still don't think anything in the Marvel movies, like the MCU movies, comes close to the train scene in Spider-Man 2. Like, I don't think most action scenes in superhero movies come close to the train
Definitely
scene.
not a Tom Holland Spider-Man. I mean, maybe you could find some other action sequences within the MCU, obviously, like that with other characters, but specifically regarding Spider-Man, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
And well, not just the train. I mean, the tower, like skyscraper scene when they're like falling down the skyscraper with him and Doc Ock and like fighting in and out of the sky. Like just, this was like Spider-Man 2 was really the pinnacle of superhero movies at the time. Yeah. Like it was like, whoa.
I still think in a lot of ways it's the pinnacle of a very comic book feeling superhero movie.
And
it really, to me, nailed the tone that Raimi was going for, with it being really campy and really comic booky, but also like still the stakes mattered, and it really did just double down on everything good about the first one and minimized most of the things that were lesser about the first.
Yeah, and when you talk about comic book feel, it wasn't the comic book feel in that it was like we have to throw in every 5 seconds like an Easter egg to the actual comic book. It literally just felt like very comic book vibe, which is something that I appreciate because I'm always a little unsure. I like my Easter eggs, but like a lot of current productions, not just in like say Marvel, but like general of like adaptations and Easter eggs are so heavy, like from Star Wars to Marvel. It's like they're constantly trying to throw things in there. And I like it when it's done with taste, but I don't like the overemphasis on just like hooking people in, like by showing them that thing they remember from the book or from the old version, you know, type of stuff. But yeah, I could spend so long on Spider-Man 2 alone because that is probably my favorite one out of all the Spider-Man films. But and then going into Spider-Man 3, you know, things just went wrong. That being said, as a kid, I really enjoyed the movie. As a child, it was still an entertaining movie. But you know more about that movie than the actual production and the surrounding circumstances. You know, like how does Sam Raimi go from 2 really great movies to what fell apart?
Yeah, it really came down to, I think it's pretty well like known that Sam Raimi never wanted to do Venom, or at least not in that movie. And he like had his own thing they wanted to do. I think he wanted to do Vulture as the villain or something like that. Or he really wanted to focus on Sandman. I can't remember exactly, but one of the producers was like dead set on having Venom at all costs. So he kind of, I think Sam Raimi was kind of just like unenthused by it. And yeah, it definitely, I don't really want to fault Sam Raimi too much because it is a lot of studio meddling that brought that movie down. But that movie doesn't work on like just a basic storytelling level. Like nothing makes sense from scene to scene. You get this stupid amnesia plot with Harry. You get like all these just really lazy plot points. You bring back Uncle Ben after you like beautifully close out his story in 2, or you know, Peter Parker's story with him in 2. And yeah, it was just a complete mess.
And what's so sad is that when you say it was really just a mess on a scene to scene basis, on a storytelling basis, but there was actually still a lot of potential within the movie in that like a lot of the action sequences were still very cool. A lot of the actual directing, like on a shot by shot basis, not involving particularly the story, was still very good.
Sandman, the scene where Sandman like becomes Sandman is still incredible.
Yeah, I enjoyed Sandman, what they tried to do with him, at least like the little bits, all the action sequences looked really good. I even was not particularly as someone who's not like a massive comic book fan of, you know, the Green Goblin or the Hobgoblin, I kind of liked with where they were trying to go with Harry. And I liked Franco's portrayal of Harry. Not relating to the comics, you know, I'm not going to talk about whether or not it was too true or not, but like just as an actor portraying a character, I liked a lot of the ideas. I liked the relationship with MJ. It was really just the way it all came together. It was like a bunch of decent ideas that could be great.
Yeah.
With a lot of potential with the actors and the set pieces and even the story ideas. It was just that none of it came together.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But so to wrap up the review on the first trilogy, you know, obviously 2 is far and away the best. And I really love 1. We can just pretend like 3 didn't happen though.